Welcome to the Reality Reading Rainbow, and I'm glad you're listening. We have a great show in store for you today. We are talking to my friend Dave Quinn, who wrote the book, Not All Diamonds and Rosé. But before we do that, just wanted to, first of all, thank you for your support. Also let you know that we have a Patreon if you are so inclined. And it doesn't matter how much you give, whether it's $1, whether it's more, it's whatever you can afford. And I know a lot of people aren't working right now, so that is not a requirement to listen to this podcast because your presence is my present. But if you have a couple of bucks you want to throw our way, please feel free to do that. Also, you can join our Facebook page, which is the Reality Reading Rainbow, or you can follow us on Instagram at the Reality Reading Rainbow. Or if you have any book suggestions, because we are always open to suggestions, you can shoot us an email at therealityreadingrainbow@gmail.com. And I believe that's it. So, on with the show. See you in a minute. Well, hello, everybody. It is your favorite day of the week. It is time for another episode of the Reality Reading Rainbow, where we talk about books written by reality stars and try to make sense of them. I am Les Kirkendall Barrett. Hello, Victoria Wood.
Hi, Les. Happy New Year. Happy New Year to all our listeners. I'm just super excited to be back. And I'm super excited about this episode, Les.
And we have a special guest. And do you realize, I just realized, Victoria, if it wasn't for this gentleman, you and I wouldn't even know each other.
I know this wonderful relationship discussing books would not have happened. So, I just have to say thank you to our special guest. I love reading books and talking all things reality. So yeah, he's our matchmaker, Les. He's our matchmaker for sure.
And our special guest is Dave Quinn, the man who wrote the fabulous book. And I'm not just saying this because he's my friend. This honestly is my favorite book that I've read this entire podcast, Not All Diamonds and Rosé. Welcome, Dave.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. It's so good to see you, Les, and so good to see you, Victoria.
Now, seriously.
Yeah.
This book is so fucking good. Like, I read it and finished it. And normally Victoria is the one that's reading the book and finishing the book, and she's got her shit together when I don't. I finished this book in record time just because I was like enjoying it.
Oh my God. I'm so glad to hear that. It is a really good read and a fast read, I think, which is infuriating to me because it took me so goddamn long to do it. People keep being like, I read it so quickly. I'm like, please take your time with it.
Les is so right. Normally, I'm the one beating him to the punch, but this is how I know for a fact he was super invested in this book. He couldn't stop turning the pages. He beat me to it, even though I have the pretty tabs going on. I made all the notes.
Oh, yes. My God. That is incredible. You just, for those listening, just showed me the book, the thickness of the book with all its tabs of orange and pink and blue and green, like you're on your Trapper Keeper. Like this is high school. It's like your textbook. I'm obsessed.
It's the Housewives Bible. We come on here, we're talking Housewives, reality TV. We're doing recaps, even though we're talking books. We're doing it all. And this right here just has everything. So again, we were hyping it up the second it hit shelves. It was a great gift. It's the new year now, but it's still the gift that will keep on giving. So get your hands on a copy of this book, you guys. It really is good.
So here's my question to you, Dave. Mm-hmm. So I was over the holidays, I went to Europe. So I'm in the UK one day, I'm doing something, the TV's just kind of in the background for noise. And all of a sudden in London, I hear the presenter talk about, in the book, Not All Diamonds and Rosé, like in the UK.
What?
Did you realize when you were writing this, that this book was going to be the phenomenon that it is? Because this literally, and I've said this to you personally, I consider this book like the Avengers Endgame of Bravo, because it's literally changed everything. Did you realize that going into this?
No, I did not think this would be the Thanos snap of it all. I did not think that we would see this sort of, and by the way, no one did this sort of embrace from the audience. Listen, Housewives fans are fickle, and they are, I will just say, with love, very mean. And I was expecting them to be mean about it. Nobody at Bravo nor at my publishing house was ever expecting this to be as big as it was. I was told that it likely would not hit the New York Times bestseller list. I was told that it would likely not hit #1, both of which it did its first week out. So I think that there was a feeling overall going into it. In fact, a high up Bravo executive said to me that they weren't as happy with the book as they thought it would be. And I was surprised by that, because I was like, there's so much good stuff in there, but they were like, I thought it would be so much more. And I was like, I gave you everything I was told. So I went in with my tail between my legs, to be honest. I kind of entered this whole process being like, all right, I don't think anybody's really going to love this. And hopefully it won't be too much of an embarrassment and I can move forward. I was so thrilled to see how happy everyone was. And of course, now everyone's rewriting history. Like, oh, I knew it was going to be big. And I was like, no, you didn't. Not from how you were talking to me.
Okay, time out, because this is like surreal hearing this both from the publishing end as well as Bravo executives. Because I mean, really, because I had messaged Dave. Dave, do you remember? I messaged you. I told you. I gave you the prediction on when this book would hit the New York Times bestseller list. And it did. So I'm just confused. Like, who are these people? It's just wild to me. But I'm happy it defied expectations in a good way, because, that's always 10 times better, in my opinion.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I do remember when you told me that. Listen, I went in kind of hoping that that's what it would be. I'm a huge fan of Bravo, as you guys know. And I wrote every page like, this is what I want fans to be, knowing. Like, I want to know all the things. I was asking every interview question based on what I was interested in knowing as a fan. So I'm happy that it's resonated to fans on all different levels. There are people like us who know a lot about Bravo, and then there are people who are more casual viewers. And I think everyone can get something new from this book.
So how did this come about? Like, how were you approached for this? How did were you was it between you and a few other writers, or did they approach you? How did this happen?
So I had worked with Bravo for a long time. I was at the time reporting at People magazine. So I had been kind of the Housewives guy who was handling all the Housewives reporting at People. And I was talking with one of the executives one day at Bravo, and they said, have you ever thought about writing a Bravo book, a book about the Housewives? And I said, oh my God, I would love to do that. And they said, why don't you put together an idea of what you think it might look like? So I wrote a proposal of what I wanted the book to be and how I think it could kind of work together, and presented that proposal. I got an agent and presented that proposal to Bravo, and we kind of moved forward from that perspective of like doing this together. It was really exciting. I don't know if they asked multiple writers. I have no knowledge of any of that. No one told me. There's rumors out there that I stole people's proposals. I wrote it on the plane on April 25th, I believe it was. I wrote that full proposal. I was flying to Dallas for Leanne Lockin's wedding.
No.
And that's what I wrote the proposal on the plane. And I only know this because my birthday is on the 26th. So,
which is mine,
which is our birthday is on the 26th.
Dave Quinn's.
Yeah. So you remember it, right? So, that's when I wrote the proposal. And my boyfriend at the time was sitting right next to me the whole time. I wasn't looking at no one else's proposal. I just knew what I wanted this book to be. And I'm so happy that it ended up being kind of exactly how I envisioned it. A little bit. There were two things that I really wanted that never made it in the book. I wanted a full chapter, and this is how I originally wrote it. And I have these chapters. I have a chapter on reunions, and I have a chapter on vacations. And they're all like kind of cross housewives. So you have multiple housewives from different shows all talking to each other about the experience of doing a reunion, how reunions came to be, what it was like doing it in the beginning, how they grew, how they changed, walk-offs, what it's like behind the scenes, preparing for a reunion, binders and all that shit. And then I had another chapter all about vacations, who really pays for the vacations, what the vacations really like, what planning a vacation means, some memorable things that have happened on vacations, et cetera, et cetera. But the book at the time was so thick that they were like, we got to get rid of something. And those catch-all chapters, unfortunately, got the X.
No. See, the thing is, I would love to hear more on the vacations.
Yeah.
Because folks, there's just so much swirling out there about, oh, no, they don't pay for this, or this is all covered, or this person pays for this. I mean, right now, I'm watching Salt Lake City and the women are going on, vacation for Mother's Day. It's like, okay, well, who pays for this? Is it really the husbands? Is it Bravo? So I know that's a question out there that the fans have about vacations and also reunions. Like, is this one friends with Andy? Is that the reason they're on the right hand or the left hand? Or is this the reason this one's so far away? So you're right. I see now you approach the book from a viewer's perspective. All the questions we are asking, all the stuff we want to know. And it's something I found reading the book, that we were getting these answers, even for a series, which I'm sad isn't available for folks to watch now, which is DC. Right. But, we got those answers. So I was very grateful for that.
Now I have a question for you, Dave. Yeah. Because, okay, so I didn't know if you're watching the Miami reboots, but the Miami reboot is outstanding. And True T, I was not a Miami fan before, and now I love it. Do you think with the success of the Miami reboot, do you think that they would kind of maybe consider rebooting DC?
I don't think so, only because of the success of Potomac. Now, Potomac is one of their most successful franchises next to Beverly Hills and Atlanta, and I don't think that they would want to mess with Potomac. There's only... We think of these cities as having tons of options, right? Like New York City, there's so many women, but you really need a specific type of person to do reality TV, to be a housewife. She has to live her life completely out loud. She has to have a lack of self-awareness, which is very important and key, which is why I'd be a terrible housewife. She needs to, really, there needs to be an affluent lifestyle and a loud, colorful family. And you have to be willing to put your life on display for everyone, which always narrows the pool down, no matter how many times people will say, I think this celebrity should be on or this celebrity should be on. Oftentimes, they're not interested in showing all aspects of their life. And we all know what it's like when housewives go on TV and lie about it, or tell the cameras to stop rolling, or tell the other cast members they're on with not to talk about certain topics on TV, as we just saw in a recent episode of Portia's little spinoff. So I think that, you want transparency, and I don't think that there are that many women in that area who are really incredibly colorful characters to hold a show. And anybody that they have, they're going to want to put towards Potomac. That would be my guess.
True.
Right. Absolutely. So here's my question, because you made a very good point. We do think there's a big pool of women out there. Why don't we have this kind of housewife, that kind of housewife, especially for those big cities? But I also remember reading in the early parts of the book about notable housewives in OC that were supposed to come on the show, Vanessa Bryant, Hemingway, Christy Swanson, all these people. So my question to you is, Dave, seeing that you were the person who covered housewives for people for so many years, you had this background, now you're writing the book. What surprised you the most during this journey of interviewing the women, your own maybe new discoveries? Like, what was the biggest shock factor, or the, wow, I didn't know that, even after all these years?
The biggest surprise to me was the fact that production doesn't really have a say when it comes to who gets hired and who gets fired. That they can certainly make a recommendation, that they push very hard for who they want, but that the decision ultimately seems to fall on three people who work at the network. And those three people have a seemingly full control over that decision, and oftentimes make that decision when production doesn't agree with them. So Tamra Judge, for example, it was well noted in the book that the producers did not want to get rid of Tamra Judge, that the network is the one who made that decision, and production just kind of has to deal with it. Oftentimes they're the ones, production, saying, I know you don't like this person, but this is why they're very valuable, or this is why we need them. I know that you've heard from the audience that they're not happy with this person, but this is why they're important. And sometimes the network understands that, and other times the network doesn't.
Okay, quick follow-up. So with the current, because I like to bring things back to current, with the current Portia Family Matters, like I was blown away with last night's episode. So let me see now. Full transparency, we are recording Monday, January 10th. So that was last night's January 9th episode, where she made the decision not to have this discussion, advised the family members not to have the discussion, but production intervened. I mean, how common is it for production to intervene like that, you know, to kind of push the story along? And then, you know, what happens when the cast members just decide not to push in? Because we really got some great, not just behind the scenes details from execs, but there was a lot of production in here sharing, you know, the way they go about it. So kind of bringing it to present day and current TV, because again, I was blown away. How would that work?
I love when the fourth wall is broken, because I think it keeps everybody honest. And I wish that the shows broke the fourth wall more often. It doesn't mean that when women like Portia, for example, are choosing not to show different things, that they're liars. It's just that they're, you know, trying to protect themselves or protect other people. I believe Portia released a statement saying that she, you know, wanted to protect everybody in doing that. And I understand wanting to do that, but this show is meant to show the reality, and therefore we need to see the reality. So you have to show it to me. You have to show me exactly what's happening. And oftentimes producers are really fighting hard for the women to show the reality. A lot of viewers who are skeptical view the production and producers as being kind of manipulative and trying to hurt everyone. That's not what they're trying to do. They're trying to do their job, just as everyone's trying to do their job. Their job is to teach these women, to push these women to live their lives out loud. So what will often happen is that the women behind the scenes will be saying something about how they feel about people, but then won't say that when the cameras are rolling. And production will push very hard to get them to that. Not in tricky methods. They'll literally say to them, you're not being honest. You need to tell the truth of how you feel. Now, many people saw that happen in the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills with Denise and everything, and felt that she was being manipulated. I don't think she was. I think they were genuinely trying to say, if this is how you feel, if this is what's going on, tell that side of the story. Like that, the truth will always set you free. The truth will always put you in a place if you're honest and open and you talk about it. But you know, in Portia's sense, in this episode, she tried to be sneaky about it, and production caught wind, and then they tried to hold people accountable. It didn't make any sense as a viewer. If we didn't see the production do that, we would have all been like, why aren't they talking about it? This doesn't make any sense. So you saw that by pressuring her, she didn't want to talk about it then, but she eventually spoke about it to her mom, I think, later in the episode. You're like, okay, well, she's eventually going to talk about this, but it's weird that all these people who experienced it aren't. And I think that it puts the Bolo situation in a totally different light, right? Because you can see, oh, that's a situation where production didn't have to get involved because Kenya heard about it. And Kenya was like, I'm going to push this because this is a work trip and I want to know what the truth is. So oftentimes it's one or the other.
Speaking of Kenya Moore, Dave Quinn, and I've said this on this podcast before, I've wanted to fight you several times while reading this book, because I don't know what kind of voodoo spell you put on this book, but this is a testament to how good of a writer you are. You made me like people who I hated. You made me like Tamra Judge. You made me think of Peggy Sulahian in a different way.
Yeah.
You made me like Kenya Moore. And then the girls trip like backed it up. So now I love Kenya. And you did the unthinkable. You made me like Lisa Rinna, and I don't know if I can ever forgive you for this.
Well, you're holding fast at still not liking Teddy Mellencamp, so no. I can't do it all. I can't do it all.
But what I liked about your writing is with each of these people, you brought up points that I was like, oh, I didn't think about it this way. Like with Rinna, the thing that made me like Rinna was the fact that she was talking about before this show, her career had actually gone cold and she couldn't even get an agent. And it clicked in, oh, this is a gig for her. So of course she's gonna like do the most. Mm-hmm. It's her job, you know? Yeah. And by doing the most, she solidified her space on the show because she's one of these people who, as much as people say that she needs to go, after reading this, I don't think they're ever going to get rid of her because I think she knows, as we say, she knows the assignment.
Yeah, for sure.
And like, you know, with Kenya, you know, between this and Girls Trip, I was like, oh my God, she's actually a lovely person. So when you were doing your research, who surprised you? Like which housewives like actually surprised you?
That's interesting. I don't know if I was surprised by any. I was surprised by some of them who said no. Like that was actually surprising to me. Like Gretchen and Slade did not want to participate. And that was a shocking thing to me because I was like, I've always kind of viewed you from the perspective of like wanting to be thirsty for attention based on all of the Instagram posts and, you know, the behavior that I saw from both of them on the show. So I was surprised they didn't want to participate. But I really go in, just speaking to your earlier comment, like I lead my life with empathy. I lead my life with compassion. I want to understand people. I believe that it's my job, both as a reporter and as in this case, writing this book and approaching this book, to tell everyone's story as honestly and accurately as I possibly can. And I think that that's my interview style. I don't come at people with, you know, I'm not a fan of yours. And I also am not blindly a fan of any of them. I will challenge them, but I want to understand, you know, I like you, Lisa Rinna. I think you're great for the show. So let me understand this. Help me help you change the minds of the lesses in the world. And I treated everyone like that. And some people really fed into it and opened up to me. Other people were much more guarded and still remain. Karen Huger is a very guarded person. And she was a guarded person on television, I think. And she's a guarded person in her interview and in the book. There's a wall there. You can't really break through it. And Lisa Vanderpump is the same way. So you can see a lot of that stuff in the way that they come across in the book, but those who are willing to be honest and open and really kind of let it all hang out, I think they come through. And that was the most, not surprising, but the most like rewarding thing, I think, for me.
If you could have a do-over, Dave, what would you do differently with this book? Who would you really push to speak to, maybe? I know we mentioned earlier that the reunion bits weren't included in the book. The vacation bits weren't included in the book. Maybe there's a bit out there, you know, that you wish would have been added, not those two, or just maybe speaking to someone else. If you could really push for something, what would it be?
Well, first of all, I pushed for the book to be two different books. I wanted the book to be the first 5 franchises, part 1, and then the second 5 franchises, part 2. I really felt as though the fans at this point would really eat up 2 500-page books because there's so much good stuff in all of them. And I had really collected so much incredible information. When I wrote this book, I should say, in about 7 months, 8 months. I mean, it was a very quick turnaround. So the production and the editing process was very fast. Typically a book like this, you should be working on for 2 years. And I wish that there was more time for it, so we could have actually gotten a lot more in there, and that they would have been able to open it up to be, 2 books would have been great. And then that would have given me like the one chapter I feel like I didn't do right by is DC. The DC chapter is really long in the first version that I submitted, but it got completely axed down because of space. And there was so much more to that story about what was going on with those other women. And there was a full interview that wasn't included by Lydia, who I loved, but unfortunately she got chopped, and there were more voices in there. And I spoke to housewives who nearly were a part of it and didn't make it. And I spoke to, side characters, and there was just so much great stuff in that chapter I was bummed about. That's something I would want to do over again. I'd push for a 2-part book. I wanted to include Salt Lake City, but we didn't because they felt as though a year in there was not enough. And I mean, I would do everything over again in a way, but because like once you go through this process, I started it by reaching out to other authors who had written oral history books to see if they might be able to guide me on how to kind of do this. I've never written a book before, let alone an oral history book. I needed some help. None of them absolutely responded to my emails. I was completely in the dark and really frustrated about that. So now that I've done it, I have a system that I think would really work. And going back, I would do it a lot differently.
Okay, wait, now I have to jump in then. So if you could do a book on any other Bravo show, what would it be?
I've said this before, so I apologize for repeating myself, but Below Deck, I think, is the next franchise that's kind of built for it.
Yeah.
I think fans want to know about all that stuff in Below Deck. And now, especially, they're about to come out with 2 new spinoffs. So there's going to be a Below Deck Australia, and there's going to be a cold water version. I think they're calling it Adventure, Below Deck Adventure or something like that. But it's like, in Norway, those sort of cold water charters.
Ooh, like the fjords. Ooh.
Yes. So I think that that is the show that I would be most interested in exploring next.
So a question just popped into my head to piggyback off of Victoria. So when you approached the women, was it set up by the company? Did they go like, did they tell the women, this guy is going to be calling you? Or were you just thrown into to the cold calling land? What?
I would have given anything for Bravo to set all this up. No, I was thrown into the cold calling land. I think some of them were warned that I was on the way, but a lot of them did not receive that information. So I started by going to housewives who I knew and had relationships with, women like Margaret Josephs and Dolores Catania and Tamra Judge, Vicky, like I had their numbers. I knew how to get in touch with them. I could start there. And then from there, I sent a ton of DMs. I had a whole spreadsheet that I was working on where I would track who said yes, who said no, how they were speaking to me. Like I could really pay attention to all of those things and see, like, contacted them at this date, heard back from them, scheduled an interview, did the interview, transcribed the interview, put the interview in. There was a lot of things I was looking down. I had prioritized all of them by who was most important to who was least important. And I was just every day going, DMing. Thank goodness for Instagram. I DM'd a ton of people off there. And then word of mouth, I would say, like, could you get me this person's phone number? Oftentimes they were very happy to do so. Like, of course, Kathy Wakili is like, yeah, here's Rosie's phone number. That's not hard, but some of the women were so reluctant to talk to me and really difficult to pin down. The twins in Jersey gave me I could not find these friggin' twins to save my life. They would not respond to me. I nearly went to the restaurant and was like, Nico, I need your wife. But they were really difficult. Some people never responded, and I would say, I never heard from Lisa Wu, and my heart breaks just even saying it out loud. I love Lisa Wu so much. But I would go to people in her circle and say, listen, can you even just tell me if she got the message? Because the last thing I wanted was for the book to come out and someone to say, well, they never contacted me.
Right.
I contacted everyone. When a recent housewife said that she didn't even know if she was contacted, let's leave her nameless. All I could say to myself was sweetie, there were so many messages. I can show all the receipts, practically flower bouquets and smoke signals to get your attention. So yeah, everyone was contacted 1,000 times.
I mean, that's crazy to me because I'm here thinking And I'm sure there are viewers or Bravo fanatics or even just casual watchers and readers who are saying, well, this book was authorized by Bravo. This is a network authorized book. I mean, anyone can write a book about the housewives, right? But there is a difference with a book that is authorized and backed by the network. So you would think there would be some hand-holding, some email blast. I'm keeping it real. I thought to myself that there would be some assistance to say, yeah, hey, this guy, let's set something up, I mean, even if not for everyone, but, just more involvement, I guess. It's like when you think of all these famous musicians and, the estate authorizing, biographies and yada, yada, yada. I'm just thinking to myself, and families okaying this. I was thinking the Bravo family, the network, held your hand a bit more. So that's quite interesting to hear now that DMs was a method of contacting these women. So yeah, that's quite interesting.
Yeah, and I thought the same thing. But part of me is like happy about the fact that they left me alone. I mean, I would have thought if somebody was to write the oral history of Dave Quinn's life or something Dave Quinn was involved in, I would sit down and be like, these are all the things you should focus on. Bravo never did that. So I liked that I was kind of left alone to figure it all out. I did go to them sometimes when I was not hearing back from people, and Andy did make some calls for me to get me, okays. But I would say that happened 3 times in the span of 185 interviews.
And the thing is, because there was another book, I'm not going to mention it, but, the word on the street was that the people at Bravo were told, do not speak to this person. So I would even just think from the stance of, hey, this guy's going to call you. You have our permission to talk to him. You can be an open book. I would even think on that level, they would kind of step in.
Yeah, I think they did send an email at first to let those people know. I don't know how many people actually got that email or read that email, but no, yeah. And that other book was incredible. And I loved that other book. So I liked that these were 2 different things, because I'm not a good narrative writer. I could not write like he can. I think he's so brilliant and smart and has such incredible perspective and a way with words that I feel like is just poetic. And I don't have that. So I like that it was their words, not mine.
And by the way, listeners, I'm not throwing shade, because he was on the podcast and he was lovely to talk to. So.
Lovely. Yeah. He's a great guy.
But also, I think most importantly is, more than one book can exist at the same time. Right. And it's completely different styles, because you're right, Dave. And, you took the words out of my mouth. That was more narrative storytelling. There's a difference as opposed to, again, an oral history. So, both things can exist at the same time. I was grateful for both. But I want to do kind of I don't know what you call this, kind of like a quick fire question thing. We're going to go through like all the franchises, well, at least the ones that stuck out to me. And I want to know from Dave, what was the one thing from each franchise while writing this book that, was really significant that you think readers should look forward to?
Okay.
So let's start with
this is good.
Orange
I like
County.
That.
Yeah, I love these games, but I want to know, like Orange County, what's the one thing that surprised you that readers should look out for in this book?
I was surprised at the way the venom that so many of the women still, years after leaving the show, have towards Tamra Judge. You would think that Tamra Judge murdered their children and stole their entire bank accounts and identities. I mean, I was surprised that the things that she did still hold so much anger in their hearts.
Wow, that's crazy. Okay, New York. What surprised you? What should readers look out for in New York?
I had heard stories before about the fact that they were really reluctant to bring on Bethany in the first place. But what I was what I was interested in going back into this and having these conversations was how everyone felt about Bethany's return. Because it seemed from the outside that everyone was like, we're so happy to have Bethany back. And a lot of them said that. And then what I heard from a lot of the other ones was like, actually, behind the scenes, they were bitching and moaning all the time about her. Nobody wanted her to come back. Why is she coming back? She abandoned us. So that was really interesting to me.
I thought that was quite interesting. And it's one of the things I flagged, page 164 for people listening. Okay, we are now in Atlanta. What's the one thing from Atlanta?
I wanted to know, it was my burning question about why the rumors about Candy and possibly drugging and wanting to rape someone came out, and that whole story of how they came out, allegations that certain people had spread them. I wanted to know all of that, and I think we get to a clear bottom of what happened, and also why the friendship between Candy and Phaedra really fell apart.
And here I am, page 205 and 207. Okay. If you want, buy the book, okay? Buy the book and just go straight to these pages. Dave is giving you the best parts and I'm giving you the pages. Okay, now we are in Jersey.
There was something that happened in Jersey that I never knew. I think that I don't mean to be like a Bethany, but I do feel like I'm a bit of a know-it-all when it comes to Housewives. I do feel like I know it all, because I really felt like up until that point, I had studied this and I knew all the storylines and I had spent so much time talking about things that happened behind the scenes. This shocked me. I was out to lunch with Dolores. We were talking and she casually just said to me, oh, well, and then we were talking about the vacations and putting together a vacation and this and that. And she goes, I put together that whole vacation in season 3 in the Dominican Republic. I was supposed to go on that trip. And then they replaced me with Greg Bennett. And that was the trip that everyone got arrested in. So, glad I wasn't there for it. And I said, yeah. And then we kept talking. And then as she was talking more, my brain was going, wait, did she just say arrested? Wait, who the fuck was arrested? And I'm like going in my head, like, I don't remember anyone being arrested. Wait, is there someone arrested? And so finally, like I said, I'm sorry, Dolores, I'm not really listening to you. You mentioned something about arrested. And I said, yes, like I knew what you were talking about. And then I spent the whole time thinking, I don't know what you're talking about. So what are you talking about? And she told me this story. And then I went back and got the story from Caroline and Melissa and everyone said to me, we're not supposed to tell you this. And I said, yes, you are. Tell me this. Caroline actually said, if Andy Cohen calls me and tells me I can tell you this, then I'll tell you this. And sure enough, I had to call Andy and say, could you please text Caroline and tell her she can tell me this? And that story still to this day is like, I'm surprised there was headlines about everything in the book. So many headlines that made no headlines.
Right. And especially since that was the whole reason for the fallout, or one of the reasons for them falling out, right?
Yes, it is why Caroline and Teresa essentially fell apart. Yeah, it started there.
Wow. And yes, I flagged that one, page 2.
We didn't coordinate this beforehand. I just want to let everyone know.
Yes. I came up with this game on the fly. I'm finding the pages because I do have them marked.
But this is good. Let's keep it up. This is good.
I have them marked. Okay, DC, you're right. You said most of that narrative was axed. It was a very, very short chapter. But what was the most significant thing from DC?
I was thrilled that I was able to interview the 2 women who worked for a column in the Washington Post called Reliable Sources. The 2 women who worked on Reliable Sources. These women are incredible. Okay. They were the ones who were really tracking. Roxanne and Amy are their names. Excuse me.
Yes.
These women are incredible. They were really tracking the casting of the Real Housewives of DC from the beginning in the way that the New York Post often does and TMZ often does for Beverly Hills. They were like, these are the women who are in the works. This was before the show was ever announced. And once they figured out who the cast were, they were really following them and everything that they did. Now, it just so happened that Obama's first state dinner, obviously a big deal, the publication of the Washington Post could assign any reporter to cover that, right? A number of reporters, and they have reporters working in the office and they have reporters working at the press line. It just so friggin' happened that they chose the same reporter who was writing the Washington Post, Roxanne, and she went there and she was the only reporter in their room who, when Mikhail Slahi walked in, was like, I know who that is. Wow. That's the newest Real Housewives of DC. Why is she here? Wow. Like, you know, and she is the one who then went and asked why, you know, and called up Amy, who was back in the office, said, check the roster. Why isn't she on the guest list? And then asked and pushed. And they're the ones who broke the story of the crash. And if it wasn't for the fact that they were following these women before they ever made it on the air, it would have gone completely unnoticed because nobody knew who she was. So they would have just thought that she was supposed to be there. Again, allegedly, because she says that she never crashed. So that was, for me, a big get. Like I was thrilled to talk to them and understand that these reporters, like every obsessed Housewives fan now who is on Instagram following these women well before their casting is ever announced, really ended up breaking this whole thing wide open. I mean, that was a global news story.
Oh, it was. And that was just so fun fact. Ebony mentioned something in her own book that we also covered on a podcast that kind of coincided with DC as well. And she wrote her book well before she even came on the show. But DC, for me, it's just so sad. You know, you can't even pay to stream it. And I just wish that's my biggest wish, is that viewers would have the opportunity, if they never watched it back then, to be able to watch it now. But continuing in the game, Beverly Hills, what is the standout from Beverly Hills? What was a shocker?
I wanted to know all of the celebrities who turned the show down. That was like my number one thing. I was like, I know that you've asked lots of stars. Give me their names. So like Lori Loughlin was somebody who they like wanted on the show and talked for a long time. This was before, of course, all the things that happened to her. Can you imagine if they had her on the show? Lori Loughlin, Carmen Electra. I mean, there are so many names of like stars who, Heather Locklear, they went out to all of the Desperate Housewives actresses and tried to get them on. Eva Longoria and Felicity Huffman. And yeah, all those ladies they had asked. I would have loved to see I want to call her Brie Vandekamp, but the redhead, Marsha Cross. Oh God, because I loved her from Melrose Place. Remember when she did that reveal of the wig? And anyway, that was mine. that was my Beverly Hills standout. I mean, there's great stuff in there, and I think the BravoCon tea is like particularly delicious.
Yep. Now streaming on Peacock, it's back. Miami. What was your standout from Miami?
You know, I was so interested. The original producer, Sherry, was my favorite interview. One of my favorite interviews that I did in the book, but favorite for that chapter for sure, because I loved the history of that show. And it's the only time that a producer has they've switched hands. They switched production companies from season 1 to 2 and 3. And Purveyors of Pop have done an incredible job with the show, and they're behind the reboot as well. It's very beautiful and glamorous. But hearing about how Sherry started it, and it wasn't supposed to be a housewife show, and what she wanted it to be, I mean, that was all really interesting to me. And she's somebody who admitted to me in the interview that she was kind of embarrassed about, you know, being let go and being replaced. And I think through that interview, she realized that she's a part of history. And, you know, she did something that nobody knew what this was going to be. And she compiled an incredible cast, right? Because she got us Alexia and Marisol and Adriana, and she got us Larsa Pippen. And, you know, she pulled these women together. And I think that that's really impressive. So just like talking to her, I think you'll really appreciate what she has to say.
Right. Okay. So I'm personally invested in this franchise. Potomac, what was the big shocker there?
God, I love Potomac so much. So I was interviewing the women of Potomac. They were the hardest interviews for me. Not because they were difficult to actually nail down, but I was writing this book during the height of the Black Lives Matter movement, and it felt very difficult for me to have phone calls with Black talent on Bravo and say to them, hey, I know this like incredible thing is happening right now, but could you tell me about the time that you called this woman a bitch? You know what I mean? Like it just felt so frivolous. And I felt that way about everyone, about all the interviews I was doing, Black or white, but with the Black housewives specifically. And you had, you know, women like Giselle who were very involved, and Candace and Ashley. It specifically made me feel kind of like I didn't know what to say in a lot of ways. And I didn't want to play down what was happening. But it turns out what was going on at the time was this battle between Candace and Potemkin, and Candace and, Monique. And so much of their disagreement really seemed to play into this movement and how people were feeling about the representation of Black women on Bravo. And it was those conversations, I think, were just super great. So I really like the way they talked about the fight and the impact it had, and conversations around colorism. And those were really cool to have behind the scenes.
Awesome. And the last franchise is Dallas.
Oh my God. I mean, Dallas is a mess of a show. The Dallas, and I say that with love and respect, but you know, Dallas, I interviewed them after they had, or as they were getting ready to film maybe they were just filming season 5. I talked to them some before and some after, but season 5 had not aired, and I had no knowledge of kind of any of the things. In fact, I think the chapter ended with us being like, it was a much lighter season. And I was like, that was another thing when the book was getting ready to publish. I was like, guys, we got to change this. And there was a feeling of like, there's really nothing else we can change. But those women all have incredible conspiracy theories about the other. They all believe that so-and-so and so-and-so were, you know, putting together binders of research against them and threatening them. And it was hard to kind of carve through all of the crazy conspiracies that they had. And this person's husband owns this production company, and this person, you know, hired a private investigator against this person. It just, when I think about the housewives in general, I try to remind the women when I speak to them one-on-one that this show is an ensemble, that they all have to work together, and that it's best when they really respect each other in that. I think Karen and Giselle are the best examples of it. They do not like each other, you can tell, but they also are never saying she should be off the show, I don't want to work with her. Like, they get that they fit as a puzzle. And for some reason, Dallas just never respected that. And it wasn't even like Survivor. I think Orange County felt like Survivor for a while. I think New York has felt like Survivor, but it wasn't even like Survivor. It was more like, you know, Lord of the Flies. Like they were ready to murder each other. And that is, I think, why the show, again, I did not have this conversation on the record because nothing, you know, was in the book at the time as what had actually happened with Dallas. But I would bet good money that the reason it fell apart was because women behind the scenes, from what I heard, were refusing to film with other women and didn't want to do the show. And what else is left?
Right. And you know, we've heard like the rumblings of like that whole like that's how you get rid of someone, is you kind of ice them out. And I personally think there should be a rule, like you got to film with everybody, whether you like them or not, because that's the point of the show.
Right, for sure. And, you know, we saw it a little bit in Potomac, where they were obviously frustrated with Monique, but Monique was offered a letter to return. And, you know, the concept was, from production standpoint, is like, let's see this. There was this big thing that happened. You obviously went into that reunion and threw a binder around and made accusations. So what's it going to look like? Are you going to make friends with these people again? What will the future hold? And I was excited to possibly see that. I'm sad that Monique chose not to return, but seems like she'll be back on reality TV soon enough. So maybe this second go around will be easier for her.
Now I have a question, because we mentioned about like, you know, it basically, they're now making attempts to integrate the cast. And in some cases, it's not going so well. And I recently heard, like, for example, like Beverly Hills, they're now bringing on Will Smith's ex-wife as a friend. What are kind of your thoughts on that? And what do you think that, because so far, pretty much, it hasn't seemed like they've been successful at it. What do you think?
I think that it's difficult, right? Because people will say, well, they're just trying to hire so-and-so because she's Black or because she's Asian or because TK, right? Because whatever. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really unfair. I think that's something that white people often say about minorities in order to make them feel less than and diminish the accomplishments of their experience, right? So, whether or not Bravo was looking to diversify its cast doesn't mean that, like, Ebony K. Williams was hired only because she was Black. She had a lot of incredible things to offer, and we shouldn't devalue that. At the same time, you need to have networks saying, okay, we need to find a Black woman. You need to be in New York's case, you need to be specific about it. So there's a lot of good in it happening to begin with. I think the problem really is not with the minority talent they find, Black, white, Black, Asian, or whatnot. I think it's with the women around them and how they react to that. And what's disappointing to me is that in New York this season, they did not seem to want to have the conversations. They wanted to run away from them every time. New York has been a show that's always been about race. It's just been about the white race all the time. And here you have somebody come in, and the only time that I saw Ebony speak about race was to celebrate Black excellence. And then when she had to respond to the racism that she was receiving from her white co-stars, both in front of the camera and, as we've since learned, in plenty of source reporting behind the scenes. So it makes me really, that's where I think the issue is that if Ramona would have sat in her apartment and had the conversation with Ebony and moved on, that would have been much better. It was how the white people were all reacting to it. And then, of course, throughout the airing, story after story in publications like the Daily Mail about how this Black woman is ruining the show and how upset everyone is, only harmed this thing and put this false narrative in people's heads that it was that the minority was to blame for the majority's problems. And again, it's another form of racism, and it's another form of not even a microaggression. That's a motherfucking macroaggression. And excuse the language. And, it's just, that is the problem. I don't think it's production not finding the right people. I think it's the people who are on the show being afraid of change and growth. And I will say, like, I think Garcelle has been an incredible fit in Beverly Hills. And part of the reason has been because the women have been willing to have the conversation. Kyle did not stand up and say, I'm not talking about this, Garcelle, and storm off.
Right.
And if she did, fuck Kyle.
Right.
Also, it's interesting because with Beverly Hills, the conversation was never perfect, but I loved it.
Right.
So that was what I wanted for New York, is to have these imperfect conversations, because we don't know it all. We won't say the right things at the right time. Even cast members of column make flub ups. I mean, case in point, right now, there's a big thing with Mary
Cosby.
And I know it's extremely divisive, but the point is, as humans, we're all imperfect. So I would much rather see an imperfect conversation happen on screen as opposed to everyone sitting and stressing and, wanting to say the right thing. And as Ramona always says, I don't intend to harm. I don't want to say the wrong thing, and just all these different things. Let's just have imperfect conversations. But on that note, Dave, I really want to know.
Can I just say something to that quickly, Victoria, before you move on from that? I think this came up in the Potemkin chapter a lot. What you said is so brilliant, and what you said is so clear. And white people, as a white person, I can say this, are not used to our actions being measured as the entire race. So if Tamara Judge throws a glass of wine in Gina Keogh's face, no one is saying, like, white women are so violent. But unfortunately, that's what happens with minorities all the time. And, you know, I can understand this to an extent as a gay person, you know, seeing imperfect, quote unquote, gay people speak out loud, sometimes say things that I don't agree with. I may be behind the scenes being like, we don't claim him. We're not all like that person. Right. And I think that, you know, maybe is what some may be feeling about Mary Cosby or other sorts of situations. We have to stop expecting everybody to be everything for everyone. You know, there are plenty of Black women who are nothing like Ebony K. Williams, and we need to allow there to be room to see Black women in many different lights, just like, you know, I think the franchise has given us overall multiple different views. It's just unfortunate. People have to be patient, and they have to let go of the decisive nature of how they view these things, because it's not a black and white issue. And I don't mean that racially. I mean, like, it's not one way or the other. It's like there's messiness in all of it.
We have to live in the gray, Dave. We have to live in the gray.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Anyway,
what I wanted
sorry
to know,
I cut you off, but
no, not at all. I mean, I was happy you actually, you know, you had an opportunity to say that, because that too in itself is also powerful. I guess my big question now is, you know, we're watching the shows, the book is out there, you know, we're having these conversations, and I'm happy we're having them. I just want to know, like, as someone who's covered Bravo for so many years, where do you see the future of Housewives going?
Ooh, good question.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we're in book 2, right? And I don't mean that just from my sense of writing this book. I think the first 15 years were one thing, and now we're entering into a whole new world. And the changeover for me was really All Stars. Like once you had all of these women together on a vacation, and you're doing a show that is clearly just being like, we know we're stars and this is what it is. Now things are shifting. So I'm interested to see, I mean, we're going to Dubai. I don't know how much life is left in some of these other shows. I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, we start to see the continuation of declining ratings to some of the long-term franchises, and then others kind of growing and taking off. I don't think that we're done with Housewives shows. I think that after Dubai, there will be 2 or 3 more cities at least. I don't think the network is ever going to run away from it. I think they're going to milk it to the end. I don't, you know, it's not like we talk about recently this idea of being the last ones to leave the party. I don't think that they will see it that way. I think that they will be the last ones to leave this party, and as they should be, right? You know, they should milk as much of it out. But these sorts of crossover shows are going to continue, perhaps reboots, and maybe we'll see more of them in the future. Who knows? But I don't know. It's an interesting time, and I'm still getting joy out of it. The thing that I will say to fans out there, and you and I and Les have met a lot of them over the years together. I will just say that if you're not enjoying the show, if every time you're watching it, you're looking for something that makes you unhappy and you're complaining about it all the time, Euphoria is now on HBO. Go watch that. Go catch up on Succession. Find something else that makes you happy. I watch it because it still makes me happy.
And like, even like, I gotta say, like, Orange County, that like they like bounce back.
Yeah,
like it's good.
and I hope New York will do the same. I've heard that they're there's rumors that they're not coming back till 2023, and maybe a year off. It's not the first time they've taken a year off. Maybe a year off will help them.
Because they did it for Teresa, right? Well, during New Jersey.
They did it for Teresa, and between season 5 and 6. So when they did the reboot season of New York, where they fired a bunch of cast members and brought in Carol and Aviva and Heather, they took a long break between season 5 and season 6 as well. So it's not the first.
You know, I agree with you, Dave. I mean, it still gives me joy. I think watching the girls' trip revived my love for Housewives. It did in a different way. I think the problem is for a lot of viewers, and I agree with you, if it's not working for you, stop watching. But I can also acknowledge as a viewer, when I started watching Housewives, I was just I think most viewers were just so thrilled to have a behind the scenes look, or to be let into the gates of, you know, these wealthy women, you know, their extravagant lifestyles, and just, you know, the way they live out loud. I think folks are craving something a bit more real, a bit more different. So there is that, how do I say it? There's that divide, there's that clashing, there's that confusion. Some people don't know what they want anymore. But I find joy in Housewives. I'm very excited to see where they take the show next. If Orange County is anything to go by, if Miami is anything to go by, it means they can change, they can evolve. Yes. So we should give them a chance, I feel.
And I am so excited for Girls Trip 2, because first of all, we love Dorinda on this podcast. We love Dorinda on this podcast. And secondly, and I've said this to you before, Dave. So Girls Trip 1, these were all like, they were all still on the show. They, didn't have, they still had their jobs other than Cynthia. But that being said, this next season, these are all housewives who have left. And so my thought is they have something to prove, because I'm sure in the back of their mind, some of them are thinking, if I prove something here, I can get back on the show. So I'm thinking it's going to be like Gladiators.
Maybe this is the real Survivor.
Right. I will tell you, just to tease, I don't want to give away specific plot lines, but I'll just say during the filming of Girls Trip 2, which I've heard rumors is called the Ex Housewives Club. So maybe that's what they're calling it. But during the filming of that show, they were given a specific episode order. Let's say 6. I don't remember what the number was. And during the filming of the episodes, I would get calls from various cast members who were filming at the time from the bathrooms, and saying to me, oh my God, it's so crazy. This thing just happened. This thing just happened. This thing just happened. And they were looking for, advice or just to calm them down. They didn't have anyone to talk to. They didn't want to bug their husbands with it or whatever. And I would say to those people, wow, that's crazy. It sounds like you maybe got 7 episodes. And then they would call the next day and I would be like, oh, well, now it sounds like you're up to 8. And they would call the next day and I'd be like, all right, you definitely got 10 episodes. So I just tried to frame it in all of their heads that there's going to be a lot of drama. People are going to probably look bad. People are going to say terrible things to each other. But you know what? We're here for fun. So let's have fun. Let's enjoy it. I mean, I can't take another season of Dorinda's a drunk, we hate her. No, right. Enough. She's fun. Let's enjoy it. Right. Let's enjoy the fun.
I absolutely agree. And also, we're not here, no offense, to watch the Virgin Marys. I want this. I want trouble. Okay, let's just have fun. Les said it. We're big Dorinda fans here. I love Dorinda. I loved her book. Les, I reread it over the holidays.
Are you serious?
Yes, that's how aesthetic I am. Not really. I have stacks of books to read, but I found so much comfort in Dorinda's words. I loved her book. So I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Dorinda on screen again.
Well, and I listened to the audio book, which, speaking of that, are we allowed to say?
Yeah.
Congratulations for getting Amy Phillips to do your audio book. I'm an Amy Phillips fan, so I'm going to get the audiobook as well.
Me too. I'm so excited. I love Amy Phillips, and I had this idea and had mentioned it before. And then I think Andy also thought it was a good idea and really pushed hard for Amy to do it. I am sad that I'm not going to be participating. I would love to, of course, participate in some way too, but I think it's going to be great. It's going to be a very different experience. And here's why I want people to understand that is that I think, and you guys tell me this, reading the book, I think you really see how serious a lot of people take this. It's not, there's some jokes and they're making fun of each other sometimes, but they're very serious conversations. And I think you really gleaned a lot of insight into the individualities by reading their words and starting to see how they fit. I think Amy is going to bring a little bit of lightness to it. So, I mean, her impressions are hilarious. And I think you're going to listen to this audiobook and it's all going to feel very fun and funny. And that's just a different experience than what the book is. So I'm excited to listen to it because I'm excited to experience it in a different way. I've sat with the seriousness of it for a long time.
Les, I'm thinking we're going to have an episode dedicated to just the audiobook experience because absolutely. I'm telling you, I agree with Dave. Reading it, it's a bit more serious. Not to kind of go off topic, but it's like with the Will Smith memoir right now. Reading it is one experience. And I had a bunch of readers tell me, no, Victoria, you need to listen to the audio. And I listened to the audio and it was like a completely different reading experience. So I'm guessing, knowing it's going to be Amy Phillips, if you bought the book, great. But now you need to get the audio for sure.
Yeah, it comes out in the end of February and I can't wait for it.
Now I'm kind of, I think I'm out of question. Oh, I've got one more question for you.
Ask a million.
So for you listeners know that I also have a room on Clubhouse called the Bravo Detective Agency.
Yes.
And so my fellow detective, Jessica, she somehow came up on a Not All Diamonds and Rosé journal, Cliff Notes. And then wasn't there like a cheater brand book as well? How did that make you feel? And this is like, we're talking like day 2 or day 3 in. Like it wasn't even, it had been out a week yet when all this stuff started coming out. How did that make you feel?
Yeah. So a lot of different things, I will say. First, kind of frustrated that so many fans were coming to me saying, I bought the book off of Amazon and I got sent this pamphlet, or I got sent this Cliff Notes version, and it has your cover on the front of it, but it's totally different inside. And it's because they were buying the paperback version, which never existed. There's no paperback. It's just a hardback. Most books, when they come out, are just hardback. So a lot of them were buying the wrong version and being sent this one. Now, I have sent every email, again, smoke signal to Amazon to try to correct this, and to my agent and to my editors to be like, what's going on? Apparently, this is something that happens very frequently, with popular books out there. And these scammers try to take advantage of the interest in a book by just kind of producing these sell-offs. But so many people have been fooled, and a lot of people in the UK, Victoria, have been fooled because they think they're struggling to get it there. Everyone comes to me and asks me how to get it in the UK. Could you tell people how to get the book?
The best place I'm going to tell you all to get the book is through Blackwell's. You can get the book through Blackwell's. You can get the book through Book Depository. That is the best place really to get the book. Now, to Dave's point, right? When a book's super popular, this really happens more often than not. The last time I remember this happening to a bunch of readers was Margaret Atwood's The Testament, which was a follow-up to The Handmaid's Tale, because that book was under lock and key. But I feel so bad for readers, because what happened was too, Dave, because I was in this pile as well, scrambling to get a copy of the book, is if you never pre-order the book super early, you weren't in the first in line. So what happens is folks are going online. They went to Amazon. They saw the hardback. It was saying 3 to 5 weeks. No one wants to wait 3 to 5 weeks. So then they see paperback and they're thinking, ooh, okay, I can get this version now. But yeah, it was super sad. But I remember thinking back to Margaret Atwood's The Testaments and all the fake books that were going out there, and the Amazon slip up, because believe it or not, Amazon fucked her launch by sending out books early. So it happens, But here's the good news, you guys. If you order the audiobook, it will come straight to your Audible account or whatever account you have, and you won't have to worry. So get it.
Much easier.
Yeah, but order the book if you're not in the United States, Book Depository or Blackwell's. Those are 2 tried and tested sites. I shop there all the time, and you'll get your book.
Thank you so much.
And I tell you, I searched for this fucking book because I pre-ordered it, but I pre-ordered it late, and they kept on pushing my date back, and people were starting to talk about the book. I spent an entire day driving around LA looking for this book. I finally found it at Target, and there were like 2 left. And the funniest part is, I remember telling you, Dave, I'm having a hard time finding the book. And you're like, so am I.
Yeah, I could not find a single copy of the book on anywhere. until I would say probably an embarrassingly long amount of time, maybe like 2 weeks before Christmas, I started finally seeing it. It just took forever for it to appear. And because so many people really just went crazy for it. And it goes to what I was telling you earlier. They did not expect that this many people would get the book. They did not expect it at all. They just, it was not a thought in anyone's idea, in anyone's mind rather. So that's what happened. That's why we ended up where we ended up.
Yeah. So, okay, my last question is the hardback book. Let's be specific. The hardback book is out there. The audiobook is on the way. Looking back now on, your whole experience and just, this whole ride, I mean, I loved watching snippets from the launch party in New York. Wish I was there. It was just, it was fabulous. I love seeing the housewives who supported the book, support you 100%. All your Clubhouse friends, social media friends, we were all sharing. They couldn't keep the books on the shelves. So my big question to you now, Dave, is what's next? What's next for Dave Quinn? Is it Bravo related, non-Bravo related? I mean, what are you working on? What can we look forward to?
Well, I definitely want to do another book, and I want to do another book within the oral history format. I really enjoyed that experience of kind of putting this all together and doing these interviews. I think that's where I really feel comfortable. So I plan on finding another avenue to talk through an oral history similar to this. Whether or not it is Bravo related, we will have to wait and see, but I'm working on a few proposals right now in that process. And then I may follow suit and walk into the avenue that you guys are currently in right now. I may try my hand at what a podcast would look like one day.
Yay! I think you should. You should.
But it will not be. I will just tell you what it won't be, because what I love about this is it's a focus thing for you guys, and you're focusing on books. What I find is that there are a wealth of incredible housewives related podcasts out there, like Hot Off the Mess by Samantha Bush from the Bravo Historian, Everything Iconic with Danny Pellegrino, et cetera, right? Just great Watch What Crappens, like great podcasts out there that recap the shows and are just so funny. I won't go down that path. I am going to try to do something really specific with housewives that nobody has done before. So hopefully I'll be able to share that news sometime this year.
Yay. Oh God. And you know what? One more thing, Dave, I was so happy when your book came out, just because before it was common knowledge and the word got out, people would come on the podcast. And this is before Victoria joined me. People would come on the podcast and they'd be like, and by the way, what do you think about Dave Quinn's book coming out? And I'd have to contact Dave. Someone mentioned the book. Do I need to
I would say, please do. Right. I mean, it was one of those things where I couldn't talk about it, and people were finding it on Amazon because it was on Amazon for a long time before, and they were finding it on Amazon, and then they were asking me about it. And I would have to be like, I don't know what you're talking about. They'd be like, what about this? I'd be like, that's interesting, and just have to stay quiet myself. So I'm thrilled that it's out and that people are able to finally experience it, because I was over here trying to stay real quiet.
Well, I'm looking forward to that podcast, whatever and whenever it might, grace my ears. I'm really excited for you, Dave. I'm hoping you get to do that Below Deck book, because that's a book I would read. I agree with you. It's that franchise. It blows my mind. One, how many people watch it, but also two, there's a lot unknown there. So I'm very excited to hopefully maybe uncover that. So that's my wish. I'm waiting on the podcast and I'm hoping it's Below Deck. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it.
All right. Sounds great. I love it.
So Dave, how would our listeners find you if you want to be found?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram. Those are the only two platforms I'm currently on, at the username 9Daves, NINEDAVES. And to the people sitting on Dave Quinn on those Instagram accounts, to that username, and to Twitter, I hope they all go fuck themselves. It's what I would give to be able to tell you I'm at Dave Quinn on Twitter and Instagram, but I'm not, because somebody else has those. So yeah, find me there.
All right, you've heard it here, and I guess that's it.
I think that's it, Dave. Thanks so much for coming and chatting with us.
Thank
you for having me. Before we go, can I just say, I think the world of the both of you. Oh. I'm so honored to have been asked to join. And it's just thrilling to see, you're both individually two people who I really care deeply for. And I love that you've built this incredible friendship and that you're growing this together. And I've been smiling this entire time, as you guys have seen on this Zoom. I can't stop because I'm just so happy to be talking with people who I care about so much. So I love you guys, and thank you again for having me.
Oh, we love you too. And like I said earlier, if it wasn't for you, we wouldn't know each other.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Dave.
And I will be taking 10%. Okay. All right. Thanks, guys, so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And everyone else, we're not done talking about the book, actually. Dave, so we originally thought that we'd be able to talk about 2 chapters a podcast episode. And then we did the first podcast episode. What, it took us 2.5 hours? So we are still talking about the book, readers. So please join us next week and keep reading. Bye.
Bye.